Make sure that we are recording. So welcome to night number 4. It's really night number 3.5, right? Because we only had half a day on last Wednesday. And so what I want to jump into tonight is some discussion around schedule management, and then move into database prospecting, the 36 Touch loyalty program, and then push forward with some conversation about source of business. So by the end of the night, we should be ready to start talking source of business over and above your database, right? What we know is that your database is your number one source of business. But before we get back to database, let's talk a little bit about your schedule management. Would it surprise you to know that when I take on new coaching clients, or when agents come to me and say, Rick, I'm struggling with making money, or I'm struggling putting transactions together, or I'm struggling finding appointments or finding listings, or whatever they might be struggling with, one of the very first questions I ask is, can you show me your calendar? Why on earth would I ask to see somebody's calendar if they have a specific struggle that they're looking for some assistance with?
It shows you how they spend their time.
Exactly right. And how people spend their time will determine their results. Do you agree with that? Everyone say yes, because the answer is definitely yes. Okay, good. It's funny, now I know how to make you all nod your head at the same time. It was almost in unison, everyone with the camera on. I even think people without their camera on were doing the same thing. Yes. So recognize that how you spend your time has a direct correlation to the results that you achieve. So your schedule becomes massively important as to whether or not your business will produce the profits that you're looking for it to produce. Yes? Okay. Now it's fun because every time I say the word yes, now I'm going to get all the nodding. So let's decide what a powerful calendar actually looks like. Let's start with what goes into your calendar first. There's something that that's massively important that you need to make sure that you have in your calendar, or you will find that there's never ever time for it. What do you think that might be?
Lead generation.
So lead generation, what else?
Morning routine.
Vacation.
Vacation. So Anna Holinsky says vacation. John, what was your thought?
Morning routine.
So your morning routine, right? All great answers. Anna takes the prize though, because your personal time and the time that you're not going to work is the first thing that you have to make sure gets into that calendar. Because I can tell you that if in fact you don't put it in there, you end up with no personal time. You end up not knowing when you're not supposed to be working. Right? How many people believe that as a real estate agent, you're kind of on call 24/7, 365? Well, that's good. Not a whole lot of hands went up. Is it because you really believe it, or because you knew I was asking a trick question? I'm not sure, right? Because some of you behave as though you're on call 24/7, 365, right? So recognize that just because you have a real estate license doesn't mean that you throw hours of operation out the window. It doesn't mean that you are not entitled to time away and time off, right? Which is why, again, we start in your calendar with that important piece. What in your week is non-negotiable, right? Do you take a certain day of the week off? For those of you who believe that real estate agents don't get days off, let's dispel that myth, right? Decide today what day a week you will have off. Maybe it changes for you each week. I don't know. Maybe you decide not to work Saturdays. How on earth could you possibly not work Saturdays in real estate? How many of you know Jody Boxer? right? Jody's one of the most productive real estate agents in our company, which makes her one of the most productive real estate agents in the county. She hasn't worked Saturdays ever, right? Jody's religious beliefs have her stop working at sundown on Friday, and she doesn't pick up again until sundown on Saturday. So that's all of Saturday, no work, no communication, no anything, right? And she figured it out. If someone had to actually go out on a Saturday, she would just have someone else take care of that. So she built that into her calendar. What other non-negotiables do you have? Do you have a responsibility to be at 3 o'clock on, 3 o'clock on the to get your kids off the bus? Is that something that's non-negotiable in your calendar? Do you see how by not putting all that stuff in there, it either doesn't happen or you start to get confused because now you have to be home at 3 o'clock for the bus, but it's not in your calendar. So you have really no clue as to what your appointments need to look like to stop to get you home for 3 o'clock. I've seen way too many real estate agents at about 2:58, like barreling home 900 miles an hour, making the turns on 2 wheels to make sure that that child doesn't have to get off the bus without them standing there, right? Because they ran late at an appointment. Calendar and schedule management solves all of that when you take your personal non-negotiable time for you, which is vacation, days off, and or other periods that you need to be not working, and put them in your calendar first. What is the second thing that goes into your calendar?
Lead generation.
Lead generation is 100% right. And I'm going to say that is combined with the answer that John gave, which is your morning routine, because I believe the two are the same, right? Lead generation is a part of your morning routine. So what does that morning routine look like, right? Are you getting up? Are you exercising? Are you doing your preps for the day? Are you then getting to the office, having 15 minutes or so of script practice, and then deciding to move forward and lead generate in whatever way you choose to lead generate, right? That there's a morning routine that starts to show up and create consistency in your day. Donna Gilbert, in just half a second, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about creating consistency and the changes that can make in one's business. But Dave had a question first, so I'm going to come back in half a second. Go ahead, Dave.
Hey, Rick, thanks. So for lead gen from a phone basis, obviously phones are the only way to lead gen. Are mornings, what's the ideal time for phone? I mean, I'm just thinking that people might be at work, for example. So what's the ideal phone lead gen prospecting time in your opinion?
Great question. I'm going to answer that in about 3 minutes. So hold tight and I'm going to get there.
All right, thank you.
Sure thing. So Don, it's funny because James talked about this one day last week, right? And so what has been your aha from a consistency perspective in terms of how you run your mornings?
So when you do have a routine and you get married to it, you decide that no matter what, you're going to do it. It takes all the guesswork out of it. It takes all the consistency out of it. It takes all the inconsistency out of it. If there's ever a decision between should I do this or do that, you know the answer. You don't have to think about it. So my schedule changed about 18 months ago at 6. So I get up anywhere between 5:30, 6 o'clock. But by 6:30, I'm on something called Early Birds Talking Real Estate. It's 30 minutes of script practice. You can participate or you can just listen. And sometimes I'm just listening because I'm doing other things, getting ready for the morning. By 7:30, I'm on the James Shaw call. The real meat and potatoes of the call starts at 8, but actually there's a lot of stuff going on before that. Some of it real estate related, some of it just business in general, some of it just talking baseball, but connections are being built and that's important. And then from there, I switch over to another script and role play practice scenario with the Cary Market Center. It's open to anyone. And there we do discuss a topic and then we go into rooms and we do about 15 minutes of script and role play. And then we come back for ahas. Then I pop on to our 9 o'clock call And from there, I go on to one of 3 Zoom sessions. Debbie has one now, but I had been in one in a few prior. And we hit it from 9:30 into 12. And we were on like this in a Zoom. We go muted. First we state our intentions, then we go muted, and we just do our smiles and dials or texting or whatever we're doing to communicate. And then we talk about it at the very end around 12, what successes you had. But here's what happens is by 12 o'clock, I've done the stuff, the productive activities that are going to fill my pipeline as I move forward. I don't have to worry about, fitting it in. I don't have to worry about not getting to it. And it is non-negotiable. So Rick is going to talk about later about how you guide your clients for things like inspections and what have you. I simply have other appointments. I don't do inspections before 12 because I have another appointment. Happens to be with myself and my database. But I am like so married to that it really has to be like some major event. And, Rick told you there's no real estate emergencies. Has to be some major life event that takes me out of my schedule. And because I just won't allow it. I'm dedicated to my goals now. And this is all recent change from realizing how important it is, just believing, in the models.
Yeah, so let me just ask one follow-up question. You said you started with consistency of your morning from a business perspective about 18 months ago. I'm curious, what has the last 18 months from a results perspective been like for you and your business versus prior?
It's been ridiculous. I mean, it's just been off the chart in business. It has put a consistency in my income as well. Not only has my income increased, but it isn't the ups and downs. It's far more predictable. When we go ahead and do the business planning clinics that we're going to go to, I can truly predict if I do what I say I'm going to do, what my income will be at the minimum, because I always leave room for the surprise. It's funny how when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, sometimes you just walk into business. You didn't see it coming, but there it is. But you can actually plan for it. It's real. It's real. The numbers are real.
My biggest takeaway from what Donna just said is she plans now for the surprise. Most people plan for surprise fallout. Donna now plans for surprise extra, right?
And, and that's part of the mindset of being around people. Well, they say that you're the
Sum of the 5 people closest to
right,
you.
exactly. So, so if you take those 5 people and then there are 10 of them and then there are 15 of them and they're high achievers also, which is what you might want to accomplish as well, all of a sudden you find out that, this isn't as scary as it. You just the breadcrumbs are there, just follow them. Just follow them and believe and get out of your own way. It's really quite remarkable.
Well said. Thank you for sharing that. So there's from somebody who has kind of done it both ways, right? And the results just show up differently when you create that consistency in the morning. Donna, Julie asked if you could just maybe pop in the chat so we can keep moving forward. The times and where you go for those activities in the morning. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So again, what does your morning look like? Right now, recognize that sometimes your morning has to start earlier to get stuff in, right? I know somebody who gets up at 4:20 every single day to make sure that he gets all the stuff that he needs to get in, including exercise and kind of quiet time and answering emails and setting a course for his day and all that stuff to still get to work on time. Now, there's an interesting concept, right? Are you still getting to work on time? Now, as independent contractors, who's monitoring that? Well, I hope the CEO is monitoring that, right? Because getting to work on time is important. Again, it builds a habit. I encourage you to figure out when you're going to actually show up into the office, like be in the office, get that habit going, right? Where there's energy and people and answers to questions. And I'm going to tell you what, somebody just confirmed this to me the other day, and it was an experienced agent probably do anywhere about 300 or 350 in take-home income this year. And he said to me recently, you know, I really have to get myself back into the office because I'm missing business. There's business to be had and handed back and forth when you're in the office. And what he meant by that is people in the office who say, hey, you know what, you actually specialize in that town over there. I don't really go there. Can you handle this for me? Right? When he was newer, there were things that were handed to him, but in his later years of experience, there are still things that go back and forth when you're in the office. So lots of reasons to find a way to get yourself into one of our locations, at least a number of days a week, to make sure that your morning routine is complete. And then let's pivot to the question Dave asked, right? The idea of building your calendar in such a way that you have a morning routine that preps you, that then moves you right into the business development part of your day, right? You don't like the words lead generation, that's okay. Call it business development, call it appointment hunting, call it, right? Call it whatever you choose to call it that allows you to go ahead and do it, right? If you have to call it something different, then call it something different. But if you're just choosing to skip that portion of your business, recognize that the results will show up dependent upon how much time you spend finding new business. And if you spend no time finding new business, well, then those results typically are what show up, right? So don't, I guess my point is don't be surprised, right? Because how you spend your time is what drives the results. So Dave asked, is there a better time to do this business development stuff, right? Whether you're reaching out on the telephone, whether you're reaching out via text, whether you're doing other versions of lead generation. And the answer is, it depends. You'll get sick of my answer of it depends at some point. Maybe it's too soon. And yet the answer really is it depends. And here's why. It depends on you and it depends on your database. However, the best time to be reaching out to people in your database, or to be following up with the expireds, or be following up with people that you found at open houses this past weekend or the weekend before, the best time to do that is always going to be the morning. And it has nothing to do with who's available. Why is the best time the morning?
Because you catch people before they get busy with all their stuff.
Right? Because just like you, what Marissa just said is stuff happens. Stuff happens to you and stuff happens to them. So the earlier you're looking to connect, the less has come up in their day to distract, and the less that has come up in your day to distract you from that task, right? Did you ever get to the office, sit down and have the phone ring and like one of your kids is sick at school? I'm like, okay, well, there goes the day. Now I have to go and figure that out, right? Because stuff happens, right? So recognize that and know that the later in the day you get, the more opportunity there is to have stuff happen both to you and to the people you're trying to connect with. Why else is the morning the best time? Tony.
My experience has been that it's if you reach out to people in the morning, they've got the whole day to get back to you. Whereas if you call them in the afternoon, they don't get back to you. They just don't. Right.
So recognizing that there's an entire afternoon that comes after the morning is a really powerful aha. First, based on what Tony just said, right? You reach out, and if for some reason they're not around, they have the whole day to get back to you. And they don't feel weird or guilty because they've let a whole day go by, or 2 days or 3 days, right? It's that same day. The other part of that has everything to do with you, right? Because you have the entire rest of the day. So if you're finding business opportunities in the morning, can you just start filling appointment opportunities in the afternoon? Say yes to that, because the answer is definitely yes. Right, and so I'll tell you, that's one of the things that I used to do really, really well. Is I was a big expireds guy, right? And so I used to get up, do my script practice, and then hit the phones to call my expireds. And I would just line up appointments in the afternoon. I would just hit expired, and appointment. And so I built my afternoon from my morning. Now, sometimes I built the next afternoon or the following evening or something like that. However, it was easy for me to fill my days with appointments that I obtained in the morning and just kind of complete them in the afternoon. By the way, for most people, and even if you think you're not one of these people, it's probably more in your head than it is physically accurate. Most people have more energy and are more focused in the morning hours than they are in the afternoon, right? So for all those reasons, utilizing the morning time for business development is a best practice. Is it the only way to do things? Of course not. And yet it is a best practice. What else do you have for us, Deb?
So I'm going to add something that has been a major aha to me in the last few months, and it is a realization that when you do what you intend to do, or another way to say it is do what you say you're going to do, when you say you're going to do it, you not only do it with energy, it creates additional energy, and you have more brain power and ability to do whatever in the afternoon, and you just feel better, don't you, Donna? It just, it's a ridiculous experience, and yet it's real.
Yeah, there's an accomplishment in that.
Mhm.
That rolls over into so many other things. If you just do what you said you were going to do, when you said you're going to do it, it's massive.
Love it, love it, love it. Anna, what else?
And also, if you accomplish that in first thing in the morning, you really have less chance to mess up your rest of the day. If you see that you start your day so productive, then you definitely want to keep moving.
Yeah, 100%, right? It's the whole idea of building momentum early, and then you allow that momentum to just keep building throughout the day. Because guys, here's what I can tell you. Here's how you know you're doing this right. You wake up and you prep for your day, whatever that looks like for you, but it's personal prep and then business prep. You spend however much time on business development. Now, if you've never spent time every morning on business development, decide that you're going to do 20 minutes, or you're going to contact 2 people, or 1 person, or 5 people, whatever that number is for you. And then do that consistently every day for at least 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. And then once you've built that habit and you've recognized that you can accomplish that, then move it up, double the time or double the number, right? Because if you base things on what it says in material, like Night Materials, or if you read Gary's book, it almost feels like you have to go from 0 to 3 straight hours of lead generating every single day. And here's what I can tell you. 99% of you will do that one time and say, well, that's for the birds. I'm never doing that again. And accomplish the one thing that is the thing we're trying to avoid. And that is destroying the mindset around how you grow your business. So don't make it a big to-do. Create winnable games for yourself. What could I do tomorrow that would give me that win, that would give me that victory, that would make me feel like I accomplished something? Contacting 2 people and talking real estate? Awesome. Then contact just the 2. Don't feel like your number has to be like everybody else's number. You need to do what works for you and create a victory for you so that you can build that momentum that Anna was talking about.
There's an expression that small tasks performed consistently outweigh massive tasks that are performed inconsistently. Yeah,
100%.
It's the consistency that's important. If it's 2 people a day, you're going to see results from 2 people 5 days a week. You're more than you're going to see from 10 people 1 day a week, or 1 day a month, or 1 day whenever.
Yeah, you want to focus on incremental success, right? That is the key. Incremental and success. Both of those words are important, right? It needs to be consistent so that incrementally it can get bigger and your results will follow. And the success portion is really important. right? We're going to talk in just a moment about what creates success when you're actually reaching out to people, because it may surprise some of you, the different versions of how you find success in that. However, I think we have questions first. We have John and Tony. John, go ahead.
I was gonna say that one thing I've been doing is so like I started looking a little bit into like sleep cycles and doing a little bit of research. And so according to science, we sleep in about like 90-minute cycles, about give or take. And so it's like if you have a hard time waking up in the morning with energy, pick a time that you want to wake up at and then go back in 90-minute cycles. So for me, I try to wake up at 7. So I know I need to be in bed by at 10 or at least 11:30, because if I go to sleep at those times, when I wake up, I'm going to be waking up in my light sleep cycle, and I could just get up ready to go and hit the ground running.
Yeah, that is 100% accurate. And for those of you who didn't know that is a scientific fact. The REM cycles are about 90 minutes long. And I love the idea that John just put on the table, right? If you're struggling in the morning, you may be waking up in the middle of one of those 90-minute cycles, which is just harder for you to throw your feet over the bed and get out. Here's the other thing that's a struggle. It's now October, which means it's only going to get incrementally colder for the next few months, right? And if you're anything like me, when I'm nice and toasty warm in my bed, it's just harder to get up in the morning when it's cold, right? So create winnable games, right? That's kind of what John just put on the table. Can you rewind backwards to the night before to make sure you're hitting bed at a certain time? I'll tell you, we had an agent in the office a number of years ago who, for everything she attempted to do to get into the office at a certain time, she just simply couldn't find a way to create success there. And so we met one day and we were talking about it. And she said, I can't get up, get to the gym, go home, like create this, like this doesn't happen naturally, like this takes some time to create, and get to the office on time the way I'd like to. I said, okay, well, when would you like to get to the office? 8:30. Okay, how much time do you need prior to getting to the office after you finish your exercise routine? Well, I need at least an hour. Okay, so that's 7:30. How long do you exercise for? 30 minutes. Okay, that's 7. How much time do you need to get up and prep for your exercise? Well, half hour. Okay, so that's 6:30. Are you getting up at 6:30? She said, no, I'm not getting up at 6:30 at all. I said, okay, well, would you like to? She said, yes. I wish I would have told her what John said, go back in 90-minute increments. However, the other side of that is, okay, well, what would be helpful to help you get up at 6:30 to create a winnable game for you? Because if you got up at 6:30, you just said you could be in the office by 8:30. She said, I don't know, if I had somebody, standing next to me, kind of prodding me to get out of bed. And I said, okay, great. Would you like me to do that? And she said, huh? And I said, would you like me to proverbially stand next to you and prod you to get out of bed? And she said, no, not really. And I said, well, how important is it to you to get to the office for 8:30? And she said, well, it is important. I said, okay, well, you know what? See what you can accomplish tomorrow morning and we'll go from there. Little did she know that my plan was to call her at 6:30 the next morning. So at 6:28, I started calling her cell phone, and it just kept going to voicemail. I thought, all right, well, I'll call the house phone. So I called the house phone. And at 6:31, she answered, hello. I said, hey, good morning. It's 6:30. This is your wake-up call. Rise and shine. We'll see you in the office in 2 solid hours. Enjoy your morning routine. Have a great exercise. Whatever you're doing, you're going to the gym, running, whatever. And she said, who is this? That was the best part of the whole call. Who is this? It's your neighbor from 15 years ago. Who do you think it is? It's long lost Uncle Bob. I said, who is it? It's Rick. We talked about you getting up on time so you could get into the office on time. I thought I would assist. And she said, I think you must be nuts. My husband thinks that maybe someone is dead because the house phone rang at 6:30 in the morning. And I said, well, assure him no one is dead. Tell him to go back to sleep. But you get your gym shorts on, get in the car and get to the gym. I'll see you in 2 hours. Guess what? That day, she was in the office at 8:30. So sometimes it's a matter of asking for some assistance. Sometimes it's a matter of allowing others to help hold you accountable to something that you maybe aren't willing to hold yourself accountable to at present. And if you're struggling with a morning routine, just to circle this back to what John said, your issue is not usually the morning. Your issue is usually the night before. Right? If you stay up until midnight or 1 o'clock, getting up at 5:30 to go to the gym is typically a struggle for most humans. Right? When you go to bed at 10, I know some of you are looking at me like 10 o'clock, really? Am I 12? I don't know. Ask yourself how much sleep you need, figure out when you need to start building your business the next morning, and start working backwards. It's all about schedule management, right? And what time you go to bed and what time you get up is part of that. Tony and then Debbie.
I'm really good at making excuses for not doing anything, and one of them is phone calls, and I've really found that I don't think you can call anybody, I mean, relatively speaking, too early. I mean, if it's somebody they know you're busy and that you're being considerate and you want to catch them before things get crazy. If it's somebody that you don't know, at least in my experience, usually they respect the fact that you're hustling. I don't hit all the crusher calls in the morning because I'm trying to do this. And I just, whenever I think about good days that I have, it's always because I've been on the phone early. And it's, for me, this is a momentum business. And if I don't have the calls done by 11:30, like a lot of calls, if I can't tell my wife or whatever, I've had some great phone calls. I'm just standing flat-footed by 12. And that's like, 3 and out. It's bad.
Yeah, so it's interesting because calling people too early, that's mostly in your head. What Tony's telling us is that's mostly in your head, right? His experience, my experience, I'm certain Debbie's experience, right, is just different than that. Certainly people in your database, people know you, like you, and trust you. You know who you shouldn't call before 9 and who you can, right? Again, I built my entire business from calling expireds. My expired outreach was anywhere from 7:30 to 8:30, depending. Now, a lot of you will listen to that and say, I think I'd rather shove pencils in my eyeballs before make an outbound phone call to someone I don't know about business or real estate at 7:45 in the morning. Except what Tony said is 110% correct. The people I would dial that early, they were getting themselves ready for work. And I caught them and could have a conversation around, look, the reason I called so early is because your property fell off the computer last night. And one of the best ways I know how to not sell your home is to have it not be featured on the multiple listing service. So pardon the early call, but I wanted to be certain that I caught you before too much time elapsed for your home not being on the market. There's a level of respect that people have for that. Now, sometimes did I wake people up? Yep. Was that okay? Sure. I just apologized. Said, oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to wake you. I'm curious, since you're up, is there a quick question I could ask and have you answer? And sometimes they would say, well, yeah, I guess so. Or sometimes they would say, yeah, no, I just said I was sleeping. I said, great. You know what? When's a better time for me to reach out? Call me back in an hour and a half. Call me after 10. Okay, great. And so I'll call back after 10. Right? It's not like all of a sudden, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. 50 lashes with the wet noodle. Let me go and sit myself in a corner for a while because I was a bad real estate agent. Come on, guys. We have to look at these opportunities as an opportunity to assist. When you come from a place of contributing, when you come from a place of somebody said 6 months ago that they wanted to sell their house and 6 months later they still haven't done it, and now they're off the MLS. I get on my white horse at 6 o'clock that morning. I'm practicing strips to make sure that by 7:30 or 7:45, I'm able to ride in on my white horse and help them save the day. Right? That's putting their needs first. You see the difference? There really is a difference. I can see it in some of your faces. You're like, that sounds like justification to me. You know what? Maybe it is. It's justification that I wholeheartedly believe because I've lived it, right? And others on this call have lived it. So recognize that people have lived before you, and here's the point I want to make in all this. You are always modeling behavior. Always modeling behavior. And so to reach out to somebody who has been on the market and now is off the market at 8 o'clock in the morning, which maybe feels too early to some of you, you're modeling behavior for them that says, your results are crazy important to me. They're so important to me that I might risk having somebody say, why are you calling me so early? To which I might just have to apologize and say, let's create an opportunity an hour from now. But I'm willing to risk that because their success and their result matters enough to me that I want to make sure that they don't leave for work and now I'm stuck. I can't reach them until maybe later in the day or the next day. And now a whole day has gone by. Here's the other thing. If I don't reach them first, in a weak moment, they may hire a weak agent who's also happened to make a call. Do I believe that I am their best path forward to creating the result that they're looking for? My answer to that is, you betcha. There are a lot of really sucky real estate agents out there. And I mean no disrespect by that, but there are a lot of sucky real estate agents out there. The good news is none of them are on this call. So you can feel confident that you are the best path forward for them. And if you don't reach out and one of the crappy ones reaches out, well, I would personally feel bad about that. Man, if I just had the courage to make a call 30 minutes earlier, you wouldn't have ended up with Joe Schmo as your realtor for 6 full months. Questions, comments, concerns? Debbie, sorry, I kept you waiting. You were poised to discuss.
It's and I don't mean to be beating a dead horse here. The sleep deprivation is actually an epidemic. And people have been like beating their chests about how little sleep they need. And it's not true. Sleep affects your weight. It affects your cognitive ability, and it certainly affects your energy. And getting into a routine is probably one of the most valuable things you can do for establishing yourself to have successful days, day after day after day, especially in this business. I've said this to many people. You've got to be in shape to do this business at a high level. It takes a lot of energy.
Love it.
Enough.
I had a coach one time say to me, so can you run fast? I said, I beg your pardon? Said, well, if I'm going to coach you, you're going to need to run fast. Because if you want to create the success that you've just outlined for me that you want to create, you can't run slowly. You got to move. And what she was talking about was energy. Like, are you like the sloth of real estate, or are you like the cheetah? Like, pick one. Because I'm going to coach you to the standard of a cheetah. And if you're a sloth trying to be coached, and I'm coaching you to the standard of a cheetah, we're going to have a lot of struggles, right? You will likely get eaten by the other cheetahs. All righty. Any other questions, comments, or concerns about schedule? All right, let me just mention one other thing about schedule. So we've put in your off time, you've put in your non-negotiable stuff, you've put in your morning routine, you've scheduled in the time that you're going to spend on business development. And then you've purposely left most of the afternoons relatively loose for your appointments, right? Some of you will carve out afternoons and say, I'm going to do appointments at 1, 3:30, and 5, or 12:30, 2, and 4, whatever that is. I know some people who have those slots, and then their goal is fill as many slots as possible each day. Some of you will just keep that a little looser so that you have some more flexibility. There's two other things I want to mention about schedule management. Number one is, especially if you're just getting started in the business, or you're about to relaunch your business, or you find that you're starting to look at scaling your business, which pretty much is everybody. I just described that there's nobody who doesn't fit into one of those three categories, right? And so really important, at least twice a week for at least an hour or so, that you find time to push the pause button, step out of the business, and work on your business instead of in your business. So maybe that's Mondays and Thursdays for you from 3 until 4 o'clock or whatever. What do I mean by working on the business instead of in the business? What are you doing during those hour-long blocks a couple of times a week? Okay, John.
I think I'm just take a guess, but I think like working on your systems and making sure like your systems are in place, or if you're like say to hire an assistant, making sure you like have like a handbook or a manual to like help the assistant know what the rules and regulations are or whatever, and how everything flows. That way they're not asking you a bunch of million questions and they can become like self-sufficient in a way.
Good guess. That's the answer. It is systems. What else? Dave?
I think doing this analysis of your business to see what's working and what's not working, so you can optimize and tailor your in-business behaviors, accordingly. Yeah.
So there's got to be time for the tracking, right? There's got to be time for a review of that tracking. There's got to be time for special projects, building the tools, right? We're going to hand you a bunch of tools, and yet some of those tools have to be customized. Some of those tools you're going to look at and say, this is fine to get me started. However, I'm going to want my own tools with my own branding on them. I don't necessarily want to use just the generic KW stuff, but there's got to be time to do all of that. And remember this law: if it's not in your calendar, it doesn't exist. So if you don't find time to do just that, right? I know agents who started in real estate 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 7 years ago, 12 years ago, who still don't use or have a pre-listing package. Now, what's a pre-listing package? It's a tool we're going to talk about late this week or early next week. However, it's a really important tool to utilize if you expect to win listings. Why don't they have them? Well, we're going to hand you one. And if you don't like what we hand you, you've got to customize it. You've got to use the foundation and then take some time to customize it. If you haven't ever built the time into your schedule to do those sorts of things, that always gets pushed then to the bottom of the list. And a month goes by, and 6 months goes by, and 12 months goes by, and 18 months goes by, and 3 years goes by. And before you know it, you're a seasoned professional without some of the tools that really high achieving seasoned professionals use. And you're scratching your head wondering, why are my results different than some other top achieving people? And some of it can be traced back to, I never built the foundational tools that I need to be successful on the buy side and on the list side. And that goes back to not allowing time to step out of the business for an hour or two each week to work on the business. Make sense? You want to know a quick story? So when Gary and Jay and Dave sat down to write this book, they were also in the middle of growing Keller Williams Realty, right? And so it wasn't like they had nothing else to do but sit down and write a book. So how did they write this book? Tuesday afternoons for as long as it took. They time blocked from lunch until 5 or 6 o'clock every Tuesday. And that's when they met and sat and brainstormed and wrote. And when the clock dinged, it was 5:01, they stopped, and they might think about what was in store for next week, but they didn't actually stop and write and get themselves in a room together until a week later. And then they spent another 5 hours. And that's how they wrote a New York Times best-selling business book, 5 or 6 hours every week, time blocked, Tuesday afternoons. That was writing time, because there were other things that they were all involved in, important things that they were all involved in. And yet they made a commitment to themselves that they would get this book written. So did it take a little longer to write it that way than if they stopped everything? Well, sure. But just like your business, you can't afford to just stop everything and only work on systems and tools. You've got to be doing the business development. You've got to have appointments. You've got to be working with buyers. You've got to be taking listings. You have to be doing all that stuff and also building the tools and the systems. So the point, carve it out in your schedule. Because once it's in your calendar, then it exists. And if you will be true and disciplined to your time block, you'll stop what you're doing, focus on that for a bit, and then go back to whatever it is you were doing an hour later. And over time, those hours all add up, and you produce tool number 1, you produce tool number 2. You have the manual that John was talking about. You perfect the system. You monitor the tracking that you've done and make decisions about what you're going to change and what you're going to do the same. Right? Without that time, you're kind of running a blind business. John.
Oh, I completely forgot that I was unmuted.
Oh,
But,
okay. All right. So the last thing I'll say about schedule management, and this is an important one. Many of you either have or will fall into the trap of allowing current business to leapfrog in front of your calendar. And so what does that mean? It means you have a calendar that says you're in the office by 8:30, you're going to do some scripts practice, you're going to have your coffee and then sit down and do some business development for an hour. That takes you to about 10, maybe 10:30, depending on what occurs. And on Sunday, you sell a house. Woohoo! And so once you sell a house on the buy side, what's the very next thing that typically happens? Your buyers have to do what? An inspection. That is correct. I heard all of you thinking inspection. So they have to do the inspection. And what most agents do is say something like, so here's a great inspector. Go ahead and call him or her and schedule that and let me know when you have scheduled the appointment for. And what comes back is, I scheduled the appointment for 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning. And because it's current business, you think that that somehow trumps your morning routine, that it's somehow more important than what you already have in your calendar, which is business development. So I'm going to point you right back to what Gary said a week ago. Current business never takes precedence over the search for new business, never. And so how could you do that differently? Yeah, John.
I was gonna say, you could have just called the inspector yourself instead of the appointment for a time that works for you, and then got back to the clients and told them the time.
That's a pretty simple solution, right? I will tell you, I got to a point where my buyers, they didn't talk to anybody. I just took care of that, because then I was able to work that into my schedule. Now, you have a conversation with the buyers. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I'll give a call to the preferred inspector that I work with all the time and see what we can do. Likely that's going to be 12 noon or 3 o'clock, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Understanding that that might conflict with work, I'm curious, can you speak with your boss to arrange for some time out of the office to make sure that you can get to your inspection on time? Remember, this is about you being able to live within a schedule, and scale your business. If all you ever do is cede control of your schedule to everybody else, you'll never have control over it. Right? I know the energy got all weird and funky. What are you thinking?
Hey, Rick,
Yes.
if I was in that kind of situation, I think I would have said, I have an appointment with Rick Scott or whatever, and I can't get away. And I'll call you after it's done. And so nothing gets in your way because your calendar says you've got another appointment, whether
That's
it's
exactly
Rick
right.
Scott or whoever.
Yeah, so you can certainly use the script. Unfortunately, I have appointments from 9 to 12 each day this week. After 12, however, I am much more. However, what I've noticed is sometimes when you hand the business card to the buyer, they make appointments even though you've said that you have an appointment from 9 to 12. They either forget that or it's right. And so the reality is now, and you can't not be at the inspection. And we can talk about other options, and yet for all intents and purposes, let's just decide that you're going to be at the inspection.
What I think happens is if I'm in the middle of it, and I know I have an appointment, so I've got to call the inspector, I've got to call you, I've got to call the inspector back. I've made 3 phone calls, whatever time it took, when the buyer or the seller could have made the appointment at on their timetable, and I keep my appointment with Rick Scott.
Yeah, but the struggle with that, Cal, is what I'm saying is that if all of a sudden there's an appointment for 9 o'clock, you can't not be there. You have to, as the buyer's agent, you need to be at the inspection. You need to be at the inspection because the listing agent expects you to be there.
Okay.
The inspector typically can't get into the house without you there. Your clients expect you to be there, right? And so I see your point, and I'm pivoting the concept. I love the concept. I think the pivot point, however, is take control of it from the beginning, such that the appointments are being scheduled in your calendar, based on your calendar, and have the inspector and the buyers and everybody else kind of work towards your. I got to the point in my business where I would push the attorneys to close at certain times because I didn't want to break my morning routine, such that I would just ask when I was a listing agent, I would just ask the seller, hey, look, tough for me. Again, in the days where we were all going to our closings, right, which doesn't happen much today, but in the days we were going to the closings, I would just ask the attorneys, I appreciate it if we could schedule this for any time after 12 noon.
Okay.
Right. And so I would plant that seed. Did it always work? No. And so then we'd have to figure something out, right? There is a rule that if you have to erase, you must replace in your calendar. And so in times where it was less possible for me to maneuver things around my own schedule, sometimes we'd have to just replace in the afternoon what I was going to do in the morning. But that needs to be the exception, not the rule. Far too many realtors have that as the rule, not the exception. John and then Donna.
Then kind of to like on the same topic a little bit, like let's say I have lead generation scheduled from 9 to 10 every morning, and my sister calls me at 9:30 in the middle of my lead generation. It's like, hey, John, I'm at the nurse at school. Can you come pick me up? I broke my leg. And now I lost 30 minutes of lead generation because I had to go pick up my sister. Let's say random example. From there, like my schedule that I initially had planned was like is now like kind of ruined because of life emergency that I couldn't foresee. Like, how do I, get back on track? Do I because let's say from 10 to 11, I had something else scheduled. Like, I don't want to cut into that time, but then also the time that's lost. It's like, what do I do about that?
Yeah, great question. So I think the first thing I would encourage is maybe a question, right, to your sister. I'm curious, could you sit tight until 10:15? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So knowing that I'm really kidding, the in emergency type things, again, remember, life is not perfect. And so our calendars won't be perfect. And so in scenarios where emergencies pop up, you could utilize the rule, if you have to erase, you must replace. And so perhaps your entire morning just kind of goes out the window because of some unforeseen something or other. Well, then you have to be disciplined enough to say, okay, well, my afternoon now has to include that hour's worth of business development that I didn't get to this morning, right? And you pop that in the afternoon. And if your afternoon was already full of appointments, well, then maybe you make it up the following morning, right? But or if that happens once every 3 years, you just look at it and say, okay, well, you know what?
Move on.
Sis, let's not do that again, and let's just move on, because I'll just pick up tomorrow and get my time in tomorrow, right? So here's the point. If it starts to feel like a straitjacket, you won't embrace it. So it can't feel like a straitjacket. It needs to feel like structure, but not a straitjacket, because there's a difference between the two. Does that help?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, especially like the straight jacket kind of metaphor you use. That definitely helped me like visualize everything.
Yeah. And the other thing that I encourage is let's be clear with family members. Look, no broken bones during lead generation time, please. Right? If you can all avoid it. If you're going to fall off the swing set or do whatever, please do that in the afternoon. Donna, go ahead.
That's funny. I love that. And you know, that's the whole thing. This is the long game. So things are going to happen. That's just called life. That's the journey. If you have anybody else in your life, even yourself, stuff's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to throw you off your schedule. You can allow yourself that grace, particularly if you've been doing everything that you're supposed to be doing when you're supposed to do it. You see, it's like having a bunch of chips that you get to like, okay, so one fell off the table and we're still good because you've been consistently doing. That isn't what I wanted to say. What I wanted to talk about was the scheduling the inspections and scheduling other things with our clients. So I don't know, but I'm in control of all of that. And I always have been. I mean, you get to say, I'm available during this time to do this specific thing. There are other people in their lives that do that for them. Their attorneys, their dentists, where they get their hair done. I mean, yeah, you can take back control of your calendar. And if for some reason they really they can only do it, well, you can hire someone with leverage to cover that for you. So, you know, it's really so critically important, particularly as you're beginning your career, to understand that you actually get to make the rules for your business and for your life as we're going forward in this journey.
Well said. Well said. And for some of you, this will be harder than for others, right? Because it's dependent on behavior, right? Those of you who have a behavioral style of a more relationship, people-based relationship style, you'll struggle a little bit more with that because it will feel like you're being mean, or you're recognize that what you're really doing is making sure that you are available for the client when the client needs you to be. That's going to come out wrong. That you are available for the client in this event, right? So if you take a stand on your calendar, you could not be available to be at the inspection, and that would just be a disaster and likely have the inspection not happen. Or you can choose to be available during these times. Your structure is creating more opportunity for the client to have you available to them than non-structure does. It took me a while to get there, but I said what was going on in my brain. Go ahead, Donna.
Yeah, and you know, it's, sorry, it just left my head. I forgot. It was so brilliant what I was about to say. Go ahead, call on somebody else. I forgot.
Yes, as soon as you remember it, just unmute. I'm certain it was brilliant.
It was.
It was either brilliant or a lie, one of the two. All right, so schedule management. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I remember. I remember. And when you were talking about it, you feel like you might be feeling like you're being mean, you're not really in the relationship. But exactly what you said, it allows you to be all in with them when you're with them, in front of them, handling their situation, doing their transaction. You're not all scattered around. And going back to earlier when you talked about modeling behavior, you're modeling behavior for your clients as well. And they understand what the relationship is going to be. They're going to have things that they have to do at a certain time, and there are things you're going to be doing, and we do this dance together. And we're going to get eventually, in the next few days, we're going to get to talking about the initial appointment. And you start setting some of those parameters right from the first meeting, so we know how we're going to work together.
Yeah, so true. I knew realtors back when I was new in the business who I kind of thought were crazy at the time, but I look back now and think, boy, they were brilliant. They posted everywhere on their business cards, on their website, everywhere they posted their business hours. Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 6, weekends by appointment only. That's what the business hours were. And then they lived by that and got to choose when they were going to operate outside of those parameters, right? But they set the expectation up front. And so recognize that you have a responsibility to your business and to your calendar to set proper expectations. A lot of agents still to this day either say out loud verbally or certainly give the impression that I am available to you whenever and however you need me. And so if that's what you're doing, you don't get the right, you haven't earned the right then to complain when someone expects to have a phone call with you at 10 o'clock at night. I used to tell my clients, this is 20 years ago when I was still young. I used to tell them flat out, look, I'm not good to you after 7:30. Like my brain is fried after that period of time. So let's make sure that we have those parameters set, right? Do you have a voicemail that says, hey, it's Rick with Keller Williams Realty. If you're calling after 7, please note that I will monitor these messages and call back next business day. Do you have a voicemail message that you can pop on during your business development time? Hey, it's Rick. If you're calling me between the hours of 9 and 10:30, I am finding buyers for my listings and houses for my buyers. Please leave me a message and I'll get back to you after 11, or I'll get back to you between 11 and 11:30, right? Just set the stage so that people don't feel like they're being ignored. And then honor what you said. Call them back between 11 and 11:30, right? Don't have a message that says, here's when you're going to hear from me, and then not make those phone calls. So as long as you're in integrity and you've set the stage, you've set the proper expectations, write this down because it's really important. Conflict only arises from unmet expectations. Conflict only arises from unmet expectations. And so if you just set really good expectations up front every step of the way, including with how your calendar works, you don't have to run into issues with clients, right? Just set the expectation. I'll give you a little scheduling secret, right? I am one guy, I am one broker, and there are 600 of you now. And there's still only one of me, right? At some point, there might be more than one of me, and yet right now, there's still only one of me. And it's important to me that I do as good a job as possible in communicating in a timely fashion, right? It doesn't always work. I am human like everybody here. Sometimes I miss a message or a text or an email. Sometimes it takes me a couple of days because I think in my head I've answered somebody and I haven't. And yet the systems that I put in place, oftentimes if you guys call, if I don't answer the phone, what I'll do is not call you back. I'll text you and say, I can talk at 10:10 or 10:20. Because for me, between 10 and 11, and usually between 3 and 4 are my two time blocks of getting back to people who have phoned outbound, who need transactionally something same day. And I book 10-minute appointments. So you'll get a text back that says, I can call you back at 10:10, 10:20, 10:30, 10:40, 10:50. And when I started to do that, I think people thought I was crazy. It's like, really, 10:10, not 10:11? And if you know me at all, you know that the answer is no, not 10:11. It's 10:10. Because I have, I have somebody from 10 until 10:10, and then I have to say thank you so much, and I move on to the next. If I think there might be an opportunity to have a slightly longer conversation because the issue seems like something I have to spend more time on, I'll book 2 slots for that one issue, right? But most things we can kind of talk through in about 10 minutes and then move forward. And it kind of drives me crazy. And oh, by the way, here's the other thing I do. I never ask people to call me. What I say to them is, I will call you at 10:10. I will call you at 10:20, because then I'm in control of that. Because what I have found is if I say, hey, call me at, people aren't as strict to their calendar as I am. And then I'm frustrated. Because 5 minutes to somebody is in a church, it's a half of an appointment in my calendar. And if I get off 5 minutes with somebody and 5 minutes with somebody else, well, now somebody's cut out, and I can't afford that, right? So I take control of that. I make the outbound phone calls. I say when I can talk. Again, if that's helpful. Remember, part of our time together is not just about best practices for today. It's about best practices for today that allow you to continue to scale and grow. The last thing I want you to do are to start building systems for a small business, only to have to start all over again when your business gets to medium, and then do it all over again when your business starts to get big. Trust me, that's what I did. I didn't have the forethought, and I didn't have anybody around me saying, why don't you just work with big scalable models so that they encompass you as you grow. It saves the reinvention process. Questions, comments, concerns on schedule management, client management, expectations of, yes, Alex.
I like, I'm sorry, I don't relate well to the word schedule, I think. So I prefer, oh my God, structure.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I like structure. That I know.
Yeah. And what's interesting, Alex, is that most humans crave structure, right? So there's a like, and there's also, if you really were honest with yourself, structure versus no structure. It's a bit of a, I kind of need that. Most humans crave structure. All children require structure, right? And if you just kind of think about, well, as a business owner, what if I looked at myself as a business owner as someone who requires the structure that a child needs? How would I design that and put structure into my business? Right? There are some of you out there who are saying, oh no, I love the freedom of whatever. And I can tell you that it may feel good to you, but the results of that typically don't feel good to you. And so at the bottom of all that, the structure that Alex is talking about helps you create results, and you like the results. Therefore, you kind of have to like the structure, right? Even if it feels too much like a straitjacket, loosen it a bit. Loosen it, but still have a structure. John, then we're going to move off of schedule management.
I read one thing in a book that I still struggle with, like sticking to it myself, but it's pretty much said like, say no first, because it's easier, to not like get yourself involved at all than to like find a reason to get out of the situation once you're already in. And so like I know that in my head, but like still like I catch myself sometimes getting involved in situations and then having to find a way like, hey, actually I had this scheduled, or hey, actually, I'm not available, or hey, can we actually reschedule?
Yeah, so that's an interesting point, and I'll give an alternative to that. One of the things that I was taught was, especially in a customer service based industry, is that the answer is yes. However, it's not yes immediately, right? It's yes based on your calendar. Now, there are times that John's talking about where no is absolutely the right answer. With your clients, the answer is typically yes, I can accommodate that on Tuesday at 10:30. Yes, however, that will not occur this afternoon, right? I'm the guy who gets complaint calls as well, right? As your broker, if there's an issue, I get those calls as well. And it's fascinating to me how people have an expectation, especially in the days of everyone with a phone and instantaneous texting back and forth, that there is this expectation of immediacy. And one of the things that I do almost immediately when we begin those conversations is to say, it being 3 o'clock, this will likely get handled. This will be handled by noon tomorrow. Period. Right. So I've said yes. Can you handle this? Yes, it will get handled by noon tomorrow. And sometimes people push back and say, no, it has to be done today. I understand. I understand it feels urgent. And yet, with all the things that I need to do on this side, I need to connect with with an agent. I need to review paperwork. I need to have that paperwork sent to me. I may have to get a second opinion. So again, I'm not going to overpromise and then underdeliver and say, I'll get back to you in an hour, and then make the phone call the next day at 12 noon, because now the people who are upset, now their hair is literally on fire, and you have to try and put that fire out before you talk to them. So instead, take the opposite, underpromise and then overdeliver. I'd rather say, yes, I understand the urgency. How that fits into my calendar is I will have that done for you by 12 noon tomorrow. I always ask the question, how does that sound? And if they say it sounds terrible, I need it done faster, I simply say, I understand. However, I don't believe I can make that happen. So by 12 noon tomorrow, we'll have an answer. And then if I do get to it earlier, I call them back at 5:30. Great news. I was able to review that faster than I expected. But do you see, that's the version of under-promising and over-delivering. Instead of making the mistake from a schedule management perspective, because over-promising and under-delivering has everything to do with your schedule. You say things, it's like it's out of your mouth before you can stop it because you want to please people. I will tell you, every once in a while, I still fall victim to that. And I will say something to somebody, hear it, and then recognize that what I've done. And what I've taken to do is just say, you know what, John, I think I just said something that I actually can't hold myself to. Instead of tonight, let's do this. I will make sure I have that back to you within 24 hours. I don't want to, and I just say the words, I don't want to overpromise and then underdeliver on that. As I said it out loud, there's just, it's unlikely I will get to that this evening.
Right.
Right. And John doesn't walk away saying he doesn't care about me.
Sure.
I think the opposite is true. I think he says, well, you know what? I appreciate being told the truth. I appreciate working myself into your calendar. Right. And then if I get to it faster, I get to call him back sooner anyway. And now he's impressed. Even if he was a complaint call, he's impressed because I told him one thing and did it faster. So now he feels more important. Anyway, we could beat that horse good and dead, and we'll stop. But the idea of with clients, to me, it's yes. It just isn't necessarily yes immediately. It's yes, here's how I can handle that. Here's how I can get that done. Here's how that fits into my schedule. Wow. I understand the urgency on that one. Let me work on that as quickly as I can and get back to you by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Right? Give yourself enough time to be impressive if you get it done earlier. Don't set yourself up for promising things that you simply can't achieve. And I know that sounds like, why would we do that? I will tell you that most of us on this call make that mistake more often than we do the other, than we underpromise and then overdeliver. Because it's human, it's natural, especially the behavioral styles on this call. Again, you want to please, you want to make people feel good. You want to feel as though people feel like you're paying attention to them. So it pushes us to sometimes overpromise. All righty. 5:42. All right, let us do this. If you have your materials, I'm in power session number 2. You don't really need them. So if you don't have them out in front of you, you don't have to go and find them. I'm just going to kind of talk through some things. On page 18 in power session number 2, it gives you some NAR statistics, the National Association of Realtors. It gives you NAR statistics on the percent of clients who say they would use their agent again versus the number who actually do. Now, if you're in your materials, it says 2014. Please note that this stat waffles maybe 0.5% one way or the other, up and down each year, and it pretty much doesn't move, right? So it's as valid today as it was in 2014. And what it says on page 18 is that 88% of clients say they would use their agent again, like after a transaction. 88%. And only 12% actually do. What are your ahas?
People don't stick to their word, maybe.
So people don't stick to their word of keeping in touch, right? Because people say, oh my goodness, I'll keep in touch. But what that statistic tells us is that as an industry, we are terrible at actually staying in communication with our past clients. Terrible.
It also tells you, if you know that somebody used agent A on their last transaction, that's not a reason not to go after them to become your clients.
Thank you so much, Dana, because that to me is actually the more important aha, right? That statistic to me screams opportunity, right? When we're newer to the business, it's so easy to think, oh, my goodness, how am I ever going to break in? Everybody has a realtor. Like everybody I know lives in a house and I didn't sell it to them. So what chance do I have of becoming their realtor? Well, that statistic says you have a massive opportunity, right? You just have to make the assumption that people aren't being communicated with and then start communicating with that group of people. Here's how we know this works. Here's how we know we prove that statistic. And then John, I'm coming to you. There was some research done out in someplace in Colorado, you know, where they have those developments where they build a wall and then they build 400 homes that all pretty much look the same inside of the gated walled community. You know, the complexes I'm talking about, right? And so they mailed for 12 months straight. They mailed a postcard and some marketing material once a month for 12 months to all 400 houses. And they were marketing John Smith as the realtor. After 12 months of that marketing, they made phone calls to all 400 people in the complex, in the housing development. And they asked 2 questions. The first question they asked was, if you were selling your home tomorrow, which realtor would you call to list it? And about 30 to 32% or so of the respondents said John Smith after 12 months of marketing, once a month. The more interesting stat is the second question. The second question asked, I'm curious, who sold you your home? And like 21 or 22%, it was the low 20s, I can't remember the exact number. Let's just call it 22. Yet 22% of respondents of those 400 people said, John Smith sold me my home. Now, here's what's fantastic about this research. John Smith wasn't a real person. They just made him up. They used some stock photo of some guy, called him John Smith or whatever his name was. He wasn't real. So he didn't sell anybody a house in that development. And yet still 1 in 5, almost 1 in 4 people said that he had. So there's a comment on 88% of clients would use their agent again, only 12% do. Because the John Smiths of the world, you come in and just communicate at such a high level and give, produce from contribution, that they forget about the other people. They forget who actually sold them their house. They forget that they're supposed to call so-and-so who did sell their house to them 5 years ago when they're ready to list. Instead, they call you because they get your postcard, your emails, your phone calls, your invitations on social media and via text to the awesome fall VIP sign in to win extravaganza. If you weren't on one of those 2 calls yesterday or today and don't plan on pushing your database into that program, I think you're nuts. Especially if you're brand new to the business. You just need to dive in and get those people that are in your world starting to see the things that you can and will do for them now that you're a licensee. I bet you never called somebody or sent somebody an email or a text about winning dinner for 10 or a Broadway weekend before your real estate license. Did you? Nope. Right? Those of you who are experienced, have you ever offered your clientele something as powerful and as cool as that before?
No.
Right? So why not just dive in? Again, for those of you who know me more than 10 minutes, I don't spend money that is not strategic. This is a choice that we are making to strategically spend this money on your behalf. And I think you're nuts not to dive in and take us up on it. Because the next one might not be on me, right? You may have to do the next one yourself. So take advantage, take advantage. Opportunity, that's the point, right? You need to make certain that you're the one communicating with these folks. And where we're headed is the 36 touch conversation, right? Which we're going to run out of time before we get there. However, that's where we're headed. We're headed to that loyalty program that we will start in on tomorrow morning, whenever at 4 o'clock. I'll still be here tomorrow morning. So I'll just be talking to different groups of people on Zoom. But the idea of the 36 touch is that loyalty program. It's how you stay in touch with a database of people. John, question?
Well, 2 little quick things. I'm gonna say, one, be it that my name is John, I'm gonna have to try extra hard to make myself stand out. Be it that John is such a generic name. And then 2, I'm gonna say, do you think a lot of that, a large part of the 88% of people who would recommend using their agents again, is that like due to recency bias?
Is it due to what? Tell me again.
Recency bias, pretty much things that happen more recently are, for example, let's say LeBron wins the NBA finals this year.
Yeah.
And more people would likely think he's the GOAT because it happened more recently than.
Yeah, well, certainly people have a very short memory span, right? Which is why the 36 touch program is so powerful. Because if you're reminding people every 10 days or so, the 36 touch is 36 touches in a year. If you divide 36 into 365 days in a year, you're touching the people in your world every 10 days. If you remind somebody every 10 days that if they have real estate needs, you're the go-to person, that has everything to do with you being the most recent reminder, right? So yes, I absolutely think it has something to do with that. It has to do with people sell people houses and think that the quality of their service is enough to be remembered. And I will tell you, my personal experience over time is that that is simply not true. We are forgotten almost immediately. And I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but it's reality, right? We are a business transaction to our clients, even if we're personable, even if we're, people say to me all the time, oh, no, I make friends with my clients. All right, well, your friend's just listed with somebody else. Right, and so the idea of I made friends with them, well, from a business perspective, instead of making friends with them, follow up. Follow up so that the business contact is relevant. When you touch somebody every 10 days, it's hard to beat the recency of that. Right? Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, I was just going to ask you if you're still on schedule for your modules as they were previously published.
Oh God, no.
Okay.
No, we took 2.5 days to get through power session 1. We'll probably finish 2 into 3 tomorrow, into Thursday. So we're still on target. We're just not on target for every day a power session, because it's if someone could help me figure out how to actually teach this content in 2 hours and go through an entire power session and still give you relevance and stories, I'm all ears, because I haven't figured it out yet. And part of the reason is, if for those of you who are around a longer period of time, when we were in person, it was 3 hours. We limited it to 2 hours. We cut an hour off of it because 3 hours on Zoom, we understand is long, right? And so we do our best to condense, and that often means we run over from one day to the next in terms of power sessions. Page 23 in power session 2 talks about the goals for making contacts with your contacts. And this is what I was talking about before, that too many of us think the only success is getting an appointment. I'm here to tell you that there's lots of different versions of success. You have to give yourself permission to have great conversations with people that further the relationship, and call that a successful contact, because that particular contact may decide to do business or pass a referral the next time. So the 3 acceptable outcomes of your ability to connect with people and have conversations that are business related are, they either give you a piece of business that you call and they say, I can't believe you called. I actually am moving to Georgia next week. Can you list my house? Right, which happens less often than you want it to, and yet more often than you think it will once you are a consistent lead generator and lead follow-upper. The second success is a referral, right? Who do you know who might be interested in buying, selling, or creating wealth by investing in real estate? The who do you know script is just a simple one that has to roll off your tongue, because when you're calling people, you're touching people 36 times in a year. You're making 4 outbound phone calls to your database. To call every single time and say, hey, you ready to move? Hey, you ready to move? Hey, you ready to move? That's not a path to success. First of all, it's weird. It almost sounds like you'd rather them move than stay around, right? That's not a service-based thought. It's not a service-based script. The service-based is, hey, Happy New Year. Just wanted to see if you had any thoughts about needing real estate services over the course of the next 12 months. Of course, if you ever do, I'm here for you. It's calling 4 months later to say, hey, happy spring. Just dropped off a little flat of marigolds on your front porch. Wanted to make sure that you knew they were there. I know people go in and out of their garages, so I wanted to make sure you knew it was there. And it's calling for July 4th to say, hey, just wanted to make sure you remembered that the town fireworks were going to be held this Saturday at 8:30 at so-and-so high school. I'm going to be there. I'd love for you to stop by. I'm going to have a little umbrella up that's red, white, and blue. So if you're in the area and you see my little umbrella, stop in. I'd love to see you in person and just catch up. Right? It's going to one of those concerts in the park in the summer and making phone calls to your database saying, hey, you know what? I know how tough it is to get home from work, eat, and get to the concerts in the park. So at next Tuesday's concert, I'm going to have an 8-foot-long hero. And I'm just calling through my database to all my VIPs. If you're heading to the concert in the park, I'd love for you to stop by. Dinner's on me that evening. Right? Simple things that you get to call and converse with people about. And then as you get more and more comfortable coming from contribution, you can end your calls with, hey, before I let you go, just a quick reminder, who do you know who might be interested in buying, selling, or creating wealth by investing in real estate? The market's got tons of momentum right now, and I would hate for anybody to miss an opportunity. Right? You see how you work business and pleasure and just be human and personable, right? I don't think anybody would say that I sounded like a telemarketer trolling for business with those kinds of outreach, right? That's what prospecting into your database is about. People think prospecting into your database is about calling people and saying, hey, do you want to sell? It's not about that. It's about reminding them about community. It's about inviting them to events. It's about hosting events, right? One of the things that Donna did during the entire 12 months from lockdown for 12 months is she reached out to her database and said, hey, you know what? Join me Tuesdays from 5:30 to 7 and bring your adult beverage of choice. We're just going to hang out on Zoom. There was no real estate related anything to that program. And over time, it grew to such a level that she had to start doing it 2 or 3 days a week, if I'm right, twice a week. So then it was Tuesdays and Saturdays or whatever it was. And more people started to show up. Now, what's cool about that is the genesis of all of that was kind of a real estate thought about reaching out to the community that is my database and making sure that they knew that Donna cared about them. It was care calls that led to, hey, we're all stuck at home. Let's have an adult beverage together. And Donna, just as a quick thought in our remaining minute, how many times let me ask this differently. Did real estate ever come up on those calls because they know what you do?
Yes.
And how many?
I never brought it up.
Because you didn't have to.
They would always bring it up. And sometimes they bring it up to such an extent that I'd have to say, okay, so I'll call you tomorrow. I mean, they wanted to have the appointment right there in front of 25 people. I'm like, okay, so I'll call you tomorrow.
Right. So, and again, I want you guys to hear these things because working a database is so different than most people think it is. And it's why so many people don't do it, because they think it's call, ask people for business. And it's actually almost none of that. It's about offering services. It's about making sure people know that you just used an awesome plumber, and you want to make sure that everybody who's important to you knows this plumber's name. It's about creating those opportunities for Tuesday night, adult beverage hours to create a sense of community. It's about it's about the VIP fall extravaganza thing that we're doing. It's allowing people to start to hear your name, knowing full well that when you stamp the Keller Williams Realty under it, or you add in some business related things, that there's business connection there. But the outreach is always about them and always about community. And we'll talk a little bit more about that starting tomorrow. We'll go through the 36 Touch program and then start working through other sources of business beginning tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Guys, that's the time we have tonight. I hope that was helpful. We will, again, pick up tomorrow bright and late at 4 o'clock. So don't be late. I will see you here, same bat time, same bat channel Have a lovely evening. And don't forget, 9 o'clock tomorrow is our Crush It call. If you haven't been on one in a while, do make sure that you're on tomorrow at 9. Tomorrow is Wednesday, so we will have scripts for you. We'll have some cool scripts to run through to help you in your business. Have a great evening. Enjoy dinner. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you.